Welcome to the CACCN video regarding the annual general meeting. During this video, I'm going to explain some of the finer points of the AGM and the requirements as to why we have them. So this is part one of a series, and this is information on holding an AGM. What are our obligations? CACCN is a not-for-profit association under the Canada Not-for-Profit Corporations Act. National and chapters are governed by the General Operating Bylaw number 1. We are also governed by our association and our operational policies. National office is required to hold an annual general meeting within 6 months following the association's year end. So our year end is March 31st currently, so we would need to hold an AGM by September 30th. Chapters are governed by the General Operating Bylaw and the CACCN chapter's policy. Under the chapter policy, chapters are required to hold an annual general meeting annually, and they're required to hold this meeting by June 30th. So when you hold the meeting on June 30th, you're actually reporting on the previous year's activities, financials. So for example, you hold your AGM by June 30th, 2021, you would be reporting on the fiscal year of 2020 to 2021. Your AGM may be in person, electronically, or can be a combination of both. So what happens when you hold your AGM? The AGM is an opportunity for the chapter to share what they've been doing for the year. So you would share the events that you've held, activities that you've held. So if you had a study group, you would report on that, as well as the financials for the chapter. So remember, this is all based on the previous year's activities. So the AGM also provides an opportunity for the chapter to discuss with their membership current year proposed activities, get some feedback, any concerns that the chapter members may have. Those would be discussed under the open forum. So you give your members an opportunity to speak, and perhaps they'll be saying, wow, you guys have done a great job. I can't think of anything else we could do. Or, hey, what about doing this? Have we thought about doing this? So it's an opportunity for you to interact with your chapter members. So having said that, I'm sure you're all looking at the screen going, oh my gosh, now what? Now what? So let's cover first the governance side of an AGM. Just stay calm. It may look intimidating, it may look scary, but it really isn't. So our suggestion is, when you're running an AGM, the key is preparation, preparation, and even more preparation. You cannot be too prepared for an annual general meeting. So all of our governance for an annual general meeting and for the association is under Borno's Rules of Order. Borno's is a very old parliamentary process. It has been used in Canada for many years. It's along the same lines as like Robert's Rules of Orders, but it's the Canadian version. So all of the AGMs that we hold in our association are conducted in accordance with Borno's Rules of Order, or BRO. We'll just call it BRO. Each chapter should have a BRO book. If you do not, contact National Office. We're happy to send out a copy. Each chapter has received a copy. It should be passed down, when your chapter executive changes, but that doesn't always happen. So if you don't have a BRO, send me one or call me. I'm happy to send you one. So the BRO covers quorum, parliamentary rules, motions, voting, elections. It covers a lot of things. It actually covers a lot of things that you probably will not experience in an AGM, but it's all there in the event that you do have that happen. So it does look intimidating. Really, it isn't. Very, very simple. So what you need to know, the most important things about BRO is, what is quorum? Who may vote? Are proxy votes allowed? And how do we do motions? Those are the most important things that you need to know. In fact, those are probably the most important things you need to know for an AGM, period. So the general rules of order come out of BRO, and they are the parliamentary rules of order for speaking, timekeeping, motions, voting. And this information should be provided to members prior to the meeting. National Office sends out an information sheet. We include the agenda, we include the motions that we're going to put forth, how the voting takes place, who can vote, proxy, etc. So who may vote? With CACCN, only active members of the association may vote. So those are members who are registered nurses working in critical care. So how do you know who is an active member? Each month you receive a membership list, and on that membership list, you will see a member type. So each member is listed on the list as either an active member, an associate affiliate, or a student affiliate. So only active members may vote. So each member list provides that information. So they can either vote in person or they can vote by proxy. So as you can see in this example, this member is an associate affiliate. They may attend the meeting, but they do not have standing to vote. So anyone who is not an active member cannot vote. Quorum is very important. I know it's a weird word. What is quorum? Quorum is basically the lowest number of members that need to be present at the meeting in order for voting to take place and for voting to be binding and valid. So to calculate quorum for your chapter meeting, you take the number of active members, not the total number of members, but the number of active members. And then you multiply that by 2.5%. For example, active members of 100, if you have 100 active members, you multiply that by 2.5%. 3 members are required to attend the meeting to have quorum to vote. Executive members count within the quorum. So if you have 5 executive members and no one else shows up for the meeting, you can technically still hold the meeting, and you probably should. So just remember that quorum is 2.5% of your active members. Now, if you don't have quorum at the time the meeting is supposed to start, you can always, make a decision that you're going to wait another 5 or 10 minutes to see if other people show up. If not, and you have more than the required number for quorum, go ahead. Members can also vote by proxy. However, proxy votes do not count as quorum, so they cannot be counted in to the quorum figure. So if you needed 3 people to run the meeting, and say there's only 2 of you, and you have one of your executive members holds a proxy vote for someone, that does not automatically raise your quorum to 3. So proxy votes cannot be included in quorum. But what is proxy voting? So proxy voting is a form of voting where an association member can give their vote to another member. And they're not giving their vote for that member to freely vote however they wish, but they are giving that vote so that it can be cast at the meeting. So members who wish to vote by proxy are required to complete a proxy form and return it to your chapter executive. Usually we require them 10 days prior to the AGM. So members, when they assign their vote, they can either assign it to the president or your vice president or another executive member, whoever you choose. So you could say, okay, you can assign it to the president or the secretary, or they can assign it to another representative. And that representative does not need to be a member of the association. So if they are a member, that member actually has 2 votes. If they are a non-member, they only have the 1 proxy vote. So if you have anybody that wants to vote, can't be present, then you need to provide proxy voting. Well, you need to provide it regardless. Here's the proxy voting form. So as you can see, it's, I, Susan Miller, a voting member in good standing of the CACCN, hereby authorize the president of the board of directors, Melanie Gauthier, or in her absence, the vice president of the board of directors, Sarah Crow, to vote in my name, or they can choose another person. So that person can be a voting member in good standing. and they would then come and vote. But it doesn't need to be a member in good standing. It could be anybody that they choose. Proxy forms are available in the chapter information portal. So one of the most important things at the AGM is, how do we vote? Like, you know, how do we know who's voting for what? So there are 3 different ways that votes can occur at the AGM. So you could do a show of hands. You can use a voting baton. A voting baton is a simple piece of paper. So take an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper and cut it into 3 pieces, and that's a voting baton. It can be colored, it can be white, it could be whatever. We typically like to use colored voting batons, or we also like to produce our own where, you know, it states the date of the meeting. It also shows, you know, the voting rules, rules of order on the back of it. It's just a handy little guide for members. The last one is a paper vote. So you could vote by ballots, but I wouldn't use ballots for items such as, you know, approving minutes or approving to dispense with the reading of the notice of the meeting. That can be done by a show of hands or a voting baton. Paper voting would be used if you're holding an election. So show of hands, like I just explained, or using a voting baton, is just on those general consensus items. So approval of the minutes, approval of reports, approval to extend the meeting. Everybody can just raise their hand or raise the baton. Usually it's unanimous. You don't need to do a count, but you know, motions either carried or defeated. But a show of hands for those general consensus items that are not going to be an issue, you can use show of hands or a voting baton. Elections are totally different. You want to do a private vote. Members have a right to vote privately. So if you're doing an in-person meeting, you can do paper ballots. If you're doing an electronic meeting, then members need to be provided with an opportunity to vote electronically and anonymously without their vote being seen by others. So when you're in person, you would hand out paper ballots. These ballots would say, you know, Mary Jane is running for president and so is Bonnie. So on the ballot, you would have, you know, Mary Jane and Bonnie's names, and people would tick off which one they would like to vote for, and they put it in a box, and the ballots are counted later. Online, that's a little bit more difficult. So some of the platforms do allow, such as Zoom, they allow members to vote via polls, or you can use a free voting app such as Polls Anywhere, but you know, something that gives them anonymity for their vote. So once you've done paper ballots, they need to be tabulated. I wouldn't stop the meeting to do this. We generally don't. What we do is we go on to announcements, and the vice president of the chapter executive plus 2 members at the meeting count the ballots. The ballots are usually counted 3 times. Each person reviewing the ballots would do a count and write it down. Then the ballot results, once you've determined who has won the election, are provided to the president, who announces the results. So when we announce an election result, we generally don't say, you know, Mary Jane received 52 votes and Bonnie received 76. We generally just say that, you know, Bonnie received the majority of votes and Bonnie is the winner. So you may also want to give the non-winners of the election an opportunity after the meeting to review the ballots. They may want to count them themselves. That's okay. They can do that. However, those ballots should be destroyed 60 days following the vote. So what you would do is, you know, once you have announced the election results, you would say, I'm going to move that the ballots be destroyed 60 days following the vote. And everyone votes on that. That can be done by a show of hands or a raise of the ballot baton. So the next thing is motions, as we just discussed. Motions are something that I guess kind of terrify people. I know when I first started doing this type of thing, I was like, wow, I didn't know what to do. They're really quite simple. So a motion is basically just a proposal made on an item on the agenda that you're going to take certain actions. So for example, one of the first motions in an AGM is to approve the minutes of the previous year's meeting. So the president would say, I now move a motion to approve the minutes of the 2019 annual general meeting of the CACCN. Do I have a mover? And then someone from the audience will say, I move, make sure that they give their full name, where they're from. Then the president will say, do I have a seconder? Again, someone from the audience will say, yes, I second, full name, where they're from. Then the president will say, is there any discussion? So it provides an opportunity for members to say, oh, I agree with this motion. I'm not really sure about this motion. Could you explain more about it? And it offers a discussion on the motion with the membership. Usually if you're approving minutes, there is no discussion and it just carries on. So once the discussion is done, then the president will say the motion is to approve the minutes of the 2019 annual general meeting of the CACCN. You appear ready to vote, and all in favor, and everyone would raise their hand or the baton. Then they would put them down, all opposed, and anyone who's opposed would raise their hand or the baton. Based on majority rules, the motion is either carried or defeated. So one important thing is no one can bring to the floor a motion that is not currently on the agenda. So if somebody stands up and says, oh, well, I would like to motion that we all have blue Tic Tacs on the tables for every meeting, and that motion was not put to the members 21 days prior to the meeting, saying, oh, Jane is raising a motion that we're going to have blue Tic Tacs on the tables at meetings, that motion cannot proceed. So that motion would be tabled to the next annual general meeting, as members need 21 days notice of items that are going to be voted on. So those are motions, really not that scary. I would suggest that you may want to do an information sheet for members that have all of the motions that are going to be put forth at the meeting on it, so they know what's coming. So again, as I explained earlier, who moves motions? They're called by the chair. They're moved and seconded by 2 active members. When responding to motions, the mover or seconder, they show their hand, they state their full name for the record. Questions to the motion or discussion. Each person can speak for a minimum of, or maximum of 3 minutes. And motions can be amended during the discussions. However, motions, again, on items requiring a vote that are not on the agenda cannot be accepted. So you can amend the motion, or members could amend the motion, provided that the essence of the original motion is still there. So if everyone said, oh, Jane would like to have blue Tic Tacs on the tables at every meeting, and Bonnie stood up and said, oh, I think that, we should have blue and green Tic Tacs because I don't like blue. And, a number of people are like, oh yeah, I don't like blue either. So motions can be amended. That a motion would now become, we move that we put blue and green Tic Tacs on the tables at every meeting. So if that motion was already on the agenda, if not, then that motion would carry forward to the next meeting. So a motion, this is what a motion looks like. So I've already gone through this, approval of the minutes. This is an example of the show your hands, the voting baton. This is actually what the motion how the motion would read. So, the chair calls it, who is usually the president. The interchangeable words are chair and president. National office uses chair at the annual general meeting, but you can just call them the president. It's quite simple. So that's the motion to approve the minutes. And those minutes would have been provided to the members prior to the meeting. Then the chair says, I'll call for the motion. Mover, again, puts their hand up, states their full name. Seconder, hand up, full name. Any discussion, members can chat, talk about it. And then the president says, you appear ready to vote. So then the president reads the motion again. Says all in favor, please raise your hand. Voting baton, once, she leaves them up for like maybe 5 seconds, 10 seconds, lower them, then opposed. Any abstaining, the motion is either carried or defeated. When someone abstains from a vote, they just choose not to choose not to say I'm in favor or I'm opposed. Maybe that's an issue that just doesn't pertain to them, or it could be an issue that they are intimately involved in. So for example, if we were moving a motion on the Canadian Journal of Critical Care Nursing and making some changes, the chief editor and the co-editors who are involved with those decisions should really abstain from voting because they have a personal interest in that motion moving forward. So that's basically a motion, and it's quite simple. So when members bring information to the floor during open forum and want to vote on something, it cannot happen because all active members of the chapter would need to be advised that there is a vote going forward, and you need to do that 21 days prior to the meeting, minimum 21 days. Okay, so that motion would be tabled to the next meeting. Minutes. Minutes of the meeting are very, very important, and they should be kept. Each chapter holding an AGM absolutely needs somebody taking the minutes, whether it's the secretary or the treasurer or the vice president or just a member of, your chapter executive. Someone needs to take minutes, and they must show the motions that were made, whether they were passed. They must show elections. They must show what you talked about, not verbatim. So you wouldn't, write out the minutes that, oh, the president said this, 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 and this. You would say, welcome, proxy votes handed out, approval of the minutes from last year, president's report, executive reports, and all of that information would be written down along with the motions. So one of the key things that I like to do is when I write out the information for the members for the meeting, I also include the motions. And I use that information where I record the motion. I record who moved it, I record who seconded it, and whether it was carried or defeated. And then that information forms my little, package of info when I go to do the minutes. So minutes are required. They must be available to the members of the chapter. They must be provided to national office when requested, and they must be retained basically for the life of the chapter. So store them electronically. When your chapter executive changes, hand them over a thumb drive with the information, or better yet, store them in your Google Drive of your chapter email. So minutes are really important. So that's basically an overview of what an AGM is all about and why you hold them and how you hold them and the things that you need to do. And it's really quite simple. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact us. I have no problem answering questions. And also there will be information and resources in the chapter information portal on your Google Drive through your chapter email that will help you prepare and plan for an annual general meeting. So best of luck to you. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to contact us.